Friday. This is the Fiscal Court's Compensation Committee meeting for April the 27th, 2022. We call this meeting to order. We have the three committee members, Squire Michael Muller, Squire Sherry Sebastian, and Judge Houston Wells here. We have Mr. Johansson from the Johansson Group online to answer questions. We'll start with I'll do my best to try to clear up a little confusion that happened yesterday. In the budget meeting, we were talking about a couple things that kind of went in different directions, but I want to make sure that we understand today. The compensation committee will need to either pass on or turn down the first step of the process, which is to accept the compensation plan. The second part is a phase one that I put in the budget, which is a 3% compensation adjustment for the employees, and also a 2% cost of living for the employees, right? Okay. And I wanted to make sure that's clear that's what that's about. So there'll be two parts that, along with several other things that, as we get into discussion, that we need to make sure before we end this meeting that we have brought to the table and either adopted or not adopted. So with that being said, Betty, I'm gonna let you talk about, you have a PowerPoint that you want to talk about, right?
Well, I'll have the PowerPoint available that if we need it, but there were several questions, I believe in the budget meeting yesterday that Mr. Johansson might be able to answer better than I could.
What were those questions?
There was several, basically. There was a question why the road department did not have their own pay structure, and the road department is part of our pay structure. And we didn't do with elected officials. See, they're part of our county judge's pay structure. They're in with
Hang on, Betty, let me clarify this. Mr. Johansson, in order to clarify this, you approached this from the fiscal court, and then you approached it separately from other elected officials. So will you discuss that and your process for the squires, as well as department heads, as well as elected officials and the audience? Right. Thank you, sir.
You bet. So for the fiscal court, for the judges area, we took all the positions that are within that respective area of office, and all of those jobs, we evaluated the jobs individually and built a pay structure based on the jobs and the market study. For the other elected officials, we looked at their jobs, but we didn't build a structure for them because they are in charge of their own structures from the standpoint of managing their budgets. So, but we gave them information perspective of evaluating their pay against the market pay, so that they would understand how they're doing in relationship to the market. So that's why all the departments that come under the purview of the judge's office were put in a pay structure together based on the internal evaluation and the external market evaluation.
Okay, we have first question off the docket, Squire Sebastian.
Yeah, just a quick question. Given that explanation, doesn't the fire department fall under this budget as well? Because we provide $6 million for the fire service. I'm just trying to make sure I understand the distinction of what is and what isn't, because that seemed very convoluted yesterday conflated for our understanding purposes.
You bet. Great question. And the reason why the fire department's carved out is because of the hours that they work in relationship from a pay standpoint. So if from the hours they work and the amount they make on a per hour basis, it makes sense for their pay structure to be separate from the pay structure for the other positions where the hours are more 2080 or 1950 hours. So that's why they're carved out. But the road department makes sense for them to be in with all the other positions in the county judge office.
And also I need to add to the fire department, they have their own pay structure. Brian can explain that.
You want, okay, Brian, well, you want to explain that first, Sebastian?
Yes, so our pay structure, because of the rank structure we have, it's broken down by rank structure, which the fire department has always been a separate pay scale since I've been on the department, I know. And trying to match up our rank structure with any other county government or comparing agencies like that would be difficult to break it down that way, from my understanding.
Okay. And Mr. Johansson, you concur with what, and that was another reason why this fire was separate.
That's correct. And that's usually the case for the municipalities, cities that have fire departments. Their structure is separate because of the rank structure and sometimes because they have step plans instead of a rank structure.
I only asked that because it was brought up yesterday. And so I'm just trying to make sure that everybody is part of this conversation. I didn't bring it up, but somebody did around the table. So I'm just trying to make sure that all parties on this call today understand some of the questions that were asked yesterday.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Squire Mahler.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Johansson, thanks for being on with us this morning.
You
I
bet.
had another question that came up yesterday, and I know when we started this process, we had talked about, retaining our employees, job positions, things like that, everything that,
Right.
that we're talking about. But one of the questions that came up is, why didn't we compare to our local state, to the state government as one of the agencies to look at pay structures and job titles and things like that? It looked like you use Henderson, and I mean, we're not losing employees to Henderson, Kentucky, so we could lose them to the state though. So just curious
Right.
why that wasn't taken into account. Thank you.
So great question. And that's also a question that came up when we're currently working with a study with the city of Frankfurt on the question about utilizing the state employees. So a couple reasons why. One, from the standpoint of the jobs and whether they match with some of the state jobs or not. That's one of the considerations. But also we use two other sources of data. We looked at the Department of Labor data, which includes both state, includes all employers, including the public entities that are paying wages. So state, county, city, private employers. So we had that information in the Department of Labor column. And then we also utilize a comp analyst study that includes both public and private entities. But to benchmark specifically with the state would be the question of really matching up with the same type jobs for all the departments that make up the county.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm just going to follow up on that.
Right,
May not be the same titles,
right.
but but they are performing the same duties. There are maintenance staff that work. I'm just going to tick off several things, and probably on for me to do that. But there are individuals that perform intake and meet and greet the public. They open mail. They respond to correspondence. They perform maintenance on buildings. I mean, they go out and do assessments of buildings for renovations and other things. So for inspectors of property that work for state government. So I'm not thinking that we are distinct in the nature of the type of in the individualized work. Let me put it that way. So I'm not trying to put words in the squire's mouth, but that's the way I'm understanding his question. And if I'm misunderstanding it, please tell me because that's the way I'm taking your question, maybe. But if it's wrong, please let me know.
Okay. Do you, Mr. Johansson, I believe I'm understand, can you hear us, Mr. Johansson?
I can.
Okay, so I believe what you're saying is that you used another means to incorporate the state salaries as part of a
To pick
national.
up the local market, we use the Department of Labor data as well as the comp analyst data to pick up the local market. So we had 2 columns of data on local data. We didn't have specific state comparisons for it to stand on its own. But we used the combination of cities, counties, the Department of Labor, and the comp analyst information to be able to capture a good representation for the market. Specifically, the state was not a column of data.
Okay. So that should cover that, okay? Other questions? Betty, yes, I have no idea what you said. Okay, other questions? Betty?
There was another concern, I believe, too, and I don't think I said this yesterday. And the clerk, jail, sheriff, coroner, and county attorney, they are not part of our pay grade structure because they don't adopt our administrative code. And I think that was a very good piece that I left out yesterday. And that's they don't adopt our administrative code and they have their own pay structure. So I think maybe that will help clarify some questions with that nature.
Yeah, I'm glad Mr. Harrod is on, Coroner Harrod or Lauren is on, because yesterday we saw the budget discussion started off with Mr. Sparks, Councilor Sparks, and he added monies in there to raise his employee salaries higher than what we were looking at, because they can do that. Elected officials can. We know that Jake Bonner has included from the jail, it's part of his budget, higher salary increases than across the board than we have proposed. We with Lauren, with you on and not Will brought up a concern which I did not know about I don't know whether it's your salary or someone else's salary in your office of being so low. So I would like for you to tell Will, and I guess there's some misunderstanding, but the other elected officials have adjusted theirs and for their employees, and so I guess Will can come back and do that too for whether it's yours or somebody else's salary.
Thank you, Judge. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm calling on you, Lauren, first.
Oh, I think that was sort of where he was looking for clarification yesterday. We hadn't received any information regarding what to do with the numbers we got back from the comp study. So I think that's what we were looking for. We were hearing different percentages, and we were hearing that, there was going to be a single percentage that was going to be across the board, and we weren't positive if that included our office or if it didn't. There wasn't a lot of clarification there. I think his concern yesterday that he was talking about, that you mentioned, Judge, is that there was one line item, which is the administrative line or line there of the salary that was, the comp study showed that it was 54.6% below the market, and the deputies were 13% below the market. That's what it came back as in the sheet that Betty Jo sent us. So I think that's where his concern was, that we were on the PowerPoint or the slide yesterday, it just said 13%. So he wasn't sure how we got that number.
And I believe I can answer that for you, because the outlier of 54% didn't represent the overall average for the department, whereas the deputies were at 13%, and they really represent probably the focus of that department. And so that's why we use the 13% as opposed to using a 54% outlier for the administrative assistant position.
Sure. Thank you.
And Mr. Johansson, I want to add, basically, this is an average on the market pay study variances, because there's other positions that's very well under market based upon your study. So what you did basically was an average. Is that correct or not?
Yeah, typically we would use the overall average, but since the coroner's department had just a few positions and you had one that was an outlier, we used the coroner, deputy coroner as the, if you will, what represented the department and represented the variance to market for that position.
Squire Sebastian? Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, Squire Sebastian. Go ahead, Squire Sebastian, then I'll call on Rick Sparks. I'm sorry.
Okay, I apologize. If you want me to wait, I'll wait.
Well, Rick was actually next. Go ahead, Councilor Sparks.
And members of the court, what I was just trying to explain yesterday, and again, what we did with my office was I also took the mean value, the market study pay rate as presented relative to professional staff, included the current CPI, which is over 8% now, and I added a little bit for my successors to address whatever they need to in the end. And it was, resulting figure was $150. I also noted yesterday that even the amount that you all were provided as to the 2021-22 value did not include raises from January, and recognized that January was a long time ago relative to the current inflation, market rates, back to court, back to office, et cetera. So I use just the market study average as to the deficiency, plus the current as it stands right now, the same one I think that for example elected officials received, to try to maintain my office's staff at a comparable rate. Because unlike other facilities and other county agencies, et cetera, these positions are very marketable in the surrounding area, legal assistants, paralegals, et cetera. So I felt like I had a duty to ensure that their pay rate was appropriate as to the not just one particular county that was presented, but an overall average. And that was how I came up with mine. I didn't just pick one of the highest one.
Okay, Squire Sebastian, thanks, Councilor.
Thank you, Judge. My question has to do with the nature of full-time versus part-time. Were these assessments made for full-time in positions, or were part-time considered? So we're having apples to apples. If they're part-time positions, that cohort was reviewed and the market pay scale was assessed against part-time and full-time to full-time. So it was 1-to-1. Can somebody speak to that?
Mr. Johansson, I guess that'd be best for you to.
Yeah, you bet. Yes. So typically we are benchmarking the full-time positions, and now there's some positions that are part-time, like let's say it's not unusual to see a county have the coroner position be a part-time position. So we're asking them to provide us information about the position as far as full-time, part-time, so that we can get as close as we can, apples to apples comparison. So we ask for what's their average per position title. We ask for their actual pay data so that we can see both full-time and part-time information when they send that to us. And that way we try to get as close as we can, apples to apples comparison for the positions.
So I understand you're asking for that from the that you're contracted with, But when you review the market, my question is when it is compared against the market, is it apples to apples? Are the part-time positions compared against part-time positions in the market state that you chose? As
So
well,
the counties and cities that sent their data to us, we get a combination of what's their actual average by title, as well as their census, their total census information. So that provides us information that allows us to look at both full-time and part-time positions. The bulk of the information or bulk of the positions are typically full-time. So from a weighted perspective, most of the information is full-time, but we also pick up census, and that includes some part-time positions too.
okay, because USDOL is more heavily weighted to full-time. I worked with that in the workforce development cabinet. So I know that makes up a large cohort of the benchmarking data. So it sounds to me like it's not necessarily a unique one-to-one relationship, but that's what I was trying to confirm. Thank you so much. You've been helpful with that. Thank you.
You bet. Good question.
Mr. Johansson, you made a recommendation that all part-time people start at $10 an hour.
Seasonal.
Except for seasonal.
Seasonal.
Okay. With that being said, that would definitely have to be based on census surrounding jobs and all of that, because you can't drive 200 yards in Frankfurt without a sign saying hiring $12.50 an hour and then $14 an hour and whatever,
Right.
Everything else.
Right. Correct. Yeah, and there's enough information in some of the work that we're doing with the city, since they have a pretty good sized parks department with quite a few employees that are seasonal and part-time. We're picking up some additional data for that study, which is still indicating that we need to be looking at least $10 for part-time seasonal positions, because what you just mentioned, the market is moving beyond that for fast food, retail, different types of positions, where now we're looking at more towards, let's say, $13 to $14 for some of the folks that are working in those sectors. So the recommendation is to get to the point where you can fill those positions, knowing that the market's trying to go beyond $10 for other positions that are in the marketplace.
Okay. Go ahead, Betty.
There was another concern that was brought up yesterday in the budget meeting of if the employees was involved in this process. And what we did was each department had sat down with each employee and went over their job descriptions. And actually, we had some departments, the employees signed off on their job descriptions with the revision. And I sent those back to Mr. Johansson and he corrected those. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I've got a file full of several job descriptions that have writing on it where we made those revisions based on.
There was a lot, but it was neat. It was definitely needed to be done. It hasn't been done in quite a while. So I'm sorry about all that paperwork, Mr. Johansson.
Well, that's all right. That's part of the process. But I think what we now have is a consistent format and up-to-date job descriptions with everybody's help.
Yes, sir.
Squire Mahler, you're first, and then Squire Sebastian.
Thank you, Judge. To kind of piggyback on what Betty Jo said, can we go through the job titles, job positions, and kind of identify what stayed the same and what was offered a change?
Is that pertinent, Mr. Johansson? Do you?
Well, so a couple things. One is that the departments were working on their job descriptions so that we would get the job description and put that into our system. So there was work done on the front end with Betty Jo and the department heads to get their job descriptions current. Those came into our system, and then we sent them back out as a work in process, if you will. And then those were modified one more time based on input from the employees and from the department head. So we actually had two different waves of work on the job descriptions, the initial work, and then once we sent it back out for review, we had edits and some additional changes. So two different times that work was accomplished on the jobs.
And I understand that. I guess I'm just curious, what was changed? You know, I mean, it didn't come in front of the committee. I guess, are we just accepting that whatever changes were made were okay? I guess that's where I'm confused.
Well, those changes weren't done by us. Those changes were done by the employees and the department heads. So, and I don't know what the question would be if.
Yeah, and I don't think I would be able to answer what some of the work was accomplished before. When we received them, some of that work was already accomplished. What I would be able to say is that I have several sheets of paper on the job descriptions where there was handwriting or changes on duties, maybe some different requirements for the job, that we were able to take those and further refine the job description and bring them current. So as far as being able to see what was done ahead of time, we wouldn't see that because what we received was the document based on work they had already done. And then, but I would have a file that would show edits to job duties, to some job requirements that were further refined from what Betty Jo sent to us in our office.
Okay, thank you. Judge, I guess my question is, I mean, it seems like every year we would go down and meet about things and kind of talk as a committee as far as, you know, if we thought it should be changed, shouldn't be changed, things like that. So I guess what you all are saying now is just the department heads and employees are changing them without our input?
Right. You're in charge of that.
Yeah, I don't, those were only on specific jobs as we were looking at it, and we didn't do them. We haven't done every job. This committee has not taken every job in Franklin County Fiscal Court and gone through it. That has never been our purview to do that or intent. Let me go to John Mitchell. John Mitchell, do you feel like that this committee ought to review what you and change anything that you, this committee should supersede you and your changes with the employees on job descriptions?
Oh, I don't think it, you know, what little minor changes we did on some of ours I don't think it needs all that oversight, but, you know, I think some of the things maybe he's talking about is some of the things that department heads have recommended. Like I said, and I've had it on the table several times. That's part of the process. That's fine. But singling those out, yeah, that's fine. We've done it before. We can do it again. But as far as going over the whole department, you know, I think department heads should be able to handle that.
Okay. I think, Squire Muller, we were talking about particular positions, i.e., I'll just say it, administrative assistants in the road department and at the fire department and fiscal court. It'd be much easier to pull those out if that's what you want to see, as opposed to every single job title in fiscal court.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to go, I'm not trying to micromanage, but I'm just curious what the recommended changes are throughout the county government. Like, just going down the list here, I don't remember the third one, planning and BC director / project manager. I don't remember that being the job position title before. And I'm not just calling that one out. It's just the first one I see. So I guess my question is more of what are the recommended changes that we don't know?
All right, so Squire Sebastian, do you want to see every one of the job changes, that all of that paperwork?
Well, my presumption, and thank you, Joe. My presumption would be that this would be something that I kind of see this process as twofold. once the court approves the positions and whatever the are from those positions. And my question, which I'll ask after this, then that would be step one of this process. And then step two would be aligning the positions and the skills that are needed to accomplish the work tasks that are before the staff in Franklin County. Then the salary schedule should correspond with those work tasks. So I see it in like you have to have the horse before you can move the cart. So that to me. Now I'd like to get to my question. I heard our HR director say that some of these positions were signed off on by individuals. So my question is why would we do that for some and not do that for all? And maybe there's a rationale. Maybe I know I did hear the word some, and it could have been a oversimplification.
That's correct. Basically, each department handled it differently. John Mitchell had his employees sign off on their job descriptions. So when I received their job descriptions, they signed off on them. I believe some of the deputy judges that's under her signed off on them. I don't control the clerk, jail, or the sheriff, so they did their own. Everybody just
What
kind of,
about the fire department? What did you all?
did they sign off?
For the fire, they didn't specifically sign off, but every person reviewed it. After every person reviewed, any notes that they made were brought back to me, and then we would evaluate to see if the change they were projecting was a justifiable change for that job description. It ended up being very minimal on any changes for our job descriptions for our ranks of the fire department.
So to answer your question, Sherry, basically some department head thought that they should have them sign off and some of them didn't. So when I received those, I just sent those straight to Mr. Johansson after I reviewed them, and I went over with the deputy judge and the judge to make sure they was okay. Because there wasn't any major changes. It was minor changes. There was no major changes on education, experience, and it was some cleanup and some things that we needed to add that should have been added years ago.
I don't think there were any changes that would affect where these positions fall in the schedule that Mr. Johansson created.
No.
Robert Hewitt, you are specifically talked about by Squire Muller and a change in your job, somebody's job description from your plan, from planning and zoning. Can you address that situation?
Well, the way I see it is that my job description was modified based on what I actually do.
Okay.
Just a quick list. I spent 5 years during the judicial center construction, a year and a half doing the fire station, the sheriff and coroner's office. I've done, I write basically all the RFPs and RFQs and bid advertisements for the fiscal court. I don't know who did it before I came over 15 years ago, but obviously there was a need for that to be done. And for whatever reason, it came to me, and I'm happy to do it. And I believe that this was an opportunity just to reflect on actually what I do, because at the bottom of every job description, it says, and all other duties as assigned. Well, I don't believe that I think that was taken too far. And I appreciate this opportunity for my description to reflect what I actually do, because it's a specialty. And I have even other departments come to me and ask for me to write their documents and advertise for them and manage the projects. I mean, we just finished Simon House. I've done renovations at the Carter House. I've done roofs and windows and HVAC here in downtown. I mean, that's above and beyond planning and zoning. So that's.
Go ahead, Squire Muller.
Hey, Robert, by no means was I just calling yours out. It was just the first one on the list. I noticed that it changed. So don't take anything personal, please. I guess, Judge, all I was looking for was, how many on this list have changed? Is it just 1, 2, 3, 10? I'm just trying to get a grasp.
October.
Yeah, who's had it?
I mean,
Mr. Johansson, can you tell us how many job titles may have been altered to reflect something different?
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but it's probably very few, probably about 3 or 4 where we were able to capture more about what the person was actually doing than what the current title provided.
also-
But it's not that many. There was only a few that we really recognized needed a title change.
And you also added 2 titles, I believe, for the road department, or recommended that a mechanic 2 and a heavy equipment operator 2 position be established.
Right, correct.
Okay, so Betty, why don't you, if you could get that, we'll send that to you, Squire Muller. Those were the only job. There's 4 of them, so you can see those.
yeah, basically, I know those. It was a planning and zoning, and that was a recommendation from Mr. Johansson. Planning and zoning, project manager, administrative assistant at the road department to an office manager. At the road department, a heavy equipment operator 2, because John would like to move up people with their experience, and a mechanic 2. Those were the 4 that was changed.
Okay, we'll send those to you.
They have those on the sheet too, this one. And
Okay, what?
in that packet, I want to explain something, because this will help explain some.
Has a question. Can I go to
Yeah,
that first? Rick, I'm sorry, your hand's been up, and I'll let you ask a question.
Oh, no. Could I just advise that the membership to be very mindful that you're always talking about 2 levels or 2 divisions, basically, of county government. You've got other constitutional officers, which do not in any way fall under the office of the judge executive, has no control, has no power, etc. And I know, at least speaking with other elected officials, what we all did relative to our positions. So I don't want to get the matter confused relative to the departments, which were handled by department officers, versus 1, 2, 7s on the however many on the other constitutional officers. Those are not under the control of the judge executive at all. And we all, at least on mine, and I know from several others, went through them specifically based on current duties that the individuals occupy every day and what they do on their duties. And it did not modify anything at all. So I was just trying to keep it cleaner.
All right, Squire Sebastian, thank you, Rick. Squire Sebastian, you had your hand up right after we called on Rick. No, okay. Go ahead, Betty. Sorry.
That's okay. I was just gonna say that basically, we've been working on this since last August. And the information that was given to you guys back on a comp meeting on August 30th. I guess I just have a concern, because we've been working on this. I've been working on this since August. And to be honest, why are these questions coming up now, I guess? Like, if we wanted the state included in this, then we should have come together and as a member with the 2 squires and.
Well, we did.
And all this has been presented several times, about 5 meetings and it's been, y'all, I'll tell you, the employees has been calling me, when is this gonna be implemented? When is this gonna be implemented? And we're working on it. We're working on it. But then these questions are coming up yesterday and today, and it's like it's setting us back more. And we're gonna get farther behind if we don't do something. And that's why the judge was just wanting to do a first phase. We have got so much work to do on this. Since I started 10 years ago, the county didn't have a compensation plan. We are just trying to make it easier for the court and fair to all employees and have a great pay structure. So we won't have these issues anymore. And all this working together, it's gonna take a little time. But all of the judge wanted was basically do a first phase, and that was the 3% comp adjustment.
So, yeah, let me ask Mr. Johansson. Mr. Johansson, we've had several conversations. We initially started the budget with a 2% cost of living, and we, in January, we gave a 5%. So we added a 2%, kind of, we're trying to work our way through it, not doing it all at one time, phasing it. As part of that, we've had several discussions in-house about how do we phase in the plan itself, even though it's not adopted yet. If it is adopted, how do you phase it in? Because according to Betty and her statistics, or her analysis, analysis of it, it would take about over $600,000 to bring it to fully implement it based on if we did it all at one time. So that is, we can't do it that way. So the 3%, talking with some of the department heads in a discussion, was what I put in the budget as an extra item to help phase this in. What are your thoughts about that? And then give us some direction in what other ways or ways to do this.
Well, initially, when you adopt policy, you've got some expense to bring employees that are under the minimum of their respective pay grade. And so that's an expense. And then on top of that is what you have as far as a 3% or an adjustment that you would have for all the employees. So typically, the first time expense on adopting policy is the expense to get folks to the above the minimum and the expense for an increase for all the employees. Then after you've adopted policy and you've completed that process, then the next phase is to evaluate each employee's pay respective of where they are in the pay range and respective to how long they've been in position. So what you're trying to do is address pay compression or movement towards the market rate, which for organizations that have a range is there's a minimum, midpoint, and a maximum. And your midpoint, based on our work with the county, is to have a pay structure with a midpoint that represents a market rate for individuals who become proficient in their job and are able to make a market rate. That's usually in the second or third budget cycle where you're trying to make those adjustments as you mature into the pay structure. Today, what we want you to do is to adopt the pay structure because that represents a structure that is competitive and gives you the ability to attract and retain individuals. Once you do that and you make your initial adjustments, which I just mentioned, then you go on to your next few budget cycles and try to work people appropriately through that structure over the next couple of years. But the key is to have the structure, have a consistent structure, and then start working within that structure.
One of the questions I have, Mr. Johansson, for you from my chair, from what the judge does, as we look and move forward in phases and trying to be competitive, how does the schedule, the plan itself with these minimum, mid, and max adjust when there are cost of livings? So the COLAs are astronomical. I can see a small adjustment, 2%, but like Councilor Sparks saying, he's including 8% in there. And so what do we do to continue to move those salaries along? Are those minimum, mid, and max?
Yeah, so typically when you have a structure, there's some organizations that we've worked with that will increase the structure by the COLA on a year-to-year basis. And historically, that's been, let's say, adjustments of 2 to 2.5%. We don't recommend moving the structure every year because that just creates pay compression. So we recommend that you evaluate moving the structure every other year and then put your emphasis on employees' pay and their movement within the structure as opposed to moving the structure every year. Now with inflation being higher, that's starting to change some of the dynamics of what you're going to pay employees and what happens with the pay structure movement. But at this point, we would recommend adopt the pay structure and then revisit moving the pay structure on an every other year basis.
Okay, thank you. Squire Sebastian?
Judge, I recall the question. I didn't write it down when we were having the conversation, so I just remembered. I understood either our HR director or our consultant to say that this process did not involve like steps and grades. And I know throughout this process, at least since I've been on the court, we have talked about instituting, if you have, I'm just going to use the title clerk. Hopefully that's not a title that we use, just in general, clerk. And then there would be like the first step of that, the second step, when someone was indicating about the road department, for example, there would now be a heavy equipment operator 1 and a heavy equipment operator 2. Was the step and grade element discussed among the overall process, or was it decided that it was very important to have distinct classifications? Because the step and grade would, for example, if you're an operator, at the initial level, they may be able to operate a roller, very simple type of equipment, but it takes more skill and ability to operate a track hoe, for example, than a single axle dump truck or a triaxle dump truck or a road grader. That would be kind of in that roller category. So I'm just trying to understand if steps and grades were part of this process, or it was always about having distinct units. Someone talked about that earlier, so I just want to get back to that just to understand that. Thank you in advance.
So Squire Sebastian, let me cover that. So it really just ties in with what you just mentioned. So the difference between a 1 and a 2 typically is based on their ability to operate more complex equipment and to be able to operate it proficiently. And so when we do our job evaluation process of those positions, we've got a category called machine operations. And that helps us to make a distinction between a 1 and a 2 based on the skill requirements that are required. And so that allows us to put the HEO in one grade and the HEO2 in another grade and make that distinction primarily based on the complexity of the equipment and the responsibility they have to operate that equipment proficiently and safely. So yes, those considerations come up in the job description and the distinction between one level as opposed to the other level.
But so you're saying there wasn't a consideration to having just the category operator and then a step and a grade when you demonstrated proficiency of moving from one to another. That's the question. So now you have.
So I understand what you're saying. So yeah, so for example, you'd have that title and would you, so everybody's a heavy equipment operator, but you may move up that range based on your ability to skill level and ability to operate at a higher level. Some counties or cities have that type of plan. A lot of it just depends on historically whether or not they've had that kind of reasoning and that process in place. The system that we're using allows you to make a distinction between the job and put them in different pay grades as opposed to in the same pay grade and let them run through the same range structure as a heavy equipment operator title.
Yeah, let's let John mention, because you're talking about his office or his department in particular. John, can you address that?
I started out with the clerk and we just moved to complex items. When we first started this conversation and when this court was sat, we talked about steps and grades. So and I see our HR director shaking her head because that's what we've talked about all along. So now we've just kind of moved away from that to distinct units. So my only question was, was there a rationale for that? What was the rationale for that? It doesn't have to be specific to a department. It's just across the board. So
I understand what
I
you're saying
we got
on that.
the equipment
Yeah.
operator, please take that off the table. It has nothing to do with that at all. Just
Well, I called on John, and John, do you want to say anything? And then we'll have Betty answer.
We're working on that. I'm sorry. I need to step in on
Okay,
this
go
because
ahead.
I want to answer Sherry's question. Yes, that is where, I hate to say let's just say I don't know what to say, clerk two. We'll say clerk two. Basically, John and I and Stephen are meeting together on just say clerk two. And basically, yes, Sherry, you're correct. They need to be able to operate efficiently in order to move up. We are working on that plan. Actually, I canceled a meeting with them yesterday because first phase is we got to adopt the plan. We don't want to work on something because this is taking a lot of time, and we appreciate you all accepting this, but we need to move forward. So yes, we are working on how to get to a clerk two, how to get to a dog catcher two. And you have to be able, we will have a checkoff sheet to be able to operate all this equipment in order to, or whatever, to get to that next phase. So yes, that is considered, that is one reason why you see those two different titles in that. Like, I hate to use it, a heavy equipment operator two and mechanic two. Those are gonna be based on operating the equipment efficiency. I hate keep using those two, but it's kind of, I don't know what else to compare it to. And the other thing that I believe Sherry was talking about of like when they really operate equipment extraordinary, just say, or a clerk, let's just say you got the best clerk, she just does everything. She's just outstanding. That's a performance raise. That is not a move within the pay grade, in my opinion, in my expertise. Did that help?
I understand what you're saying. My only question is we had discussed this type of incremental adjustment for the employee in the guise of steps and grades rather than having distinct units to move them from one thing to the other. My question is why are we, what precipitated this different route? Was there a rationale? That's all.
And
That's
I
it.
thought you answered that. Did you not say that you're working on that? That's another piece of it that's not there because we have to first adopt the plan. If the plan didn't go into that detail, because that would be another part of it, right?
Sure.
Is that right, Mr. Johansson?
Yeah, that would be another part of the process going forward is you really got to set the structure first and then start
Thank you.
working within the structure.
Great.
And also, we did not hire him to do that. So Mr. Johansson actually is doing the county a favor today, even being on, because with his professional expertise, I thought it would help, but we did not hire him to do that. That's why we're trying to do it internally moving forward. If you all want to hire him to do that, please
Well,
do it.
let's get one at a time. Counselor Sparks. Hold on.
Judge, I wanted to just delineate the statement that you just made about my employees getting an X percentage, et cetera. Our office is, I kind of think it's kind of unique to tell you the truth, but we're basically a legal office, much like the state offices, the Attorney General's office, Cabinet for Health and Service, everything like that. And the state provided 8%. In addition to the percent that was identified on this study, one of the problems I have to face is having one person sitting next to the other, and one person got 8% and the other person didn't. And I don't know about how you all think that your employees do, but I'm going to tell you something they do right now. And they do it rightfully. They talk about what they got paid wise. They talk about how much they get. They talk about the extra services that they're required to do for this, that, and the other. And if mine doesn't, I strongly encourage them to do. It's the law and it's their rule, and they can do it right now. I don't want a situation where I have a group of employees one gets X dollars and the other gets Y. There's absolutely no distinction with it whatsoever. When the funding is available, the money's available, and even when you do it without adding any percentage, it's almost exactly the amount. So I didn't say that everybody should get 8%. I think everybody should get 8%. Without even a discussion further, before you do anything else, it ought to be 8% given the current economy. And there's no justification why you're not doing that, except, well, it's your all's call, but it ought to be 8%. Mine doesn't include 8%. It includes the deficiency identified by the surrounding areas plus your 2%. So I just wanted to clarify that distinction.
So I'm glad you brought up conversation because when we do budgets and you come in, don't take this wrong, I applaud you. You come in and you give we put a 2% in for all employees. You give your employees a 6% or 8% or 5% or 3%. Our employees get 2%. Jay Urbana comes in, he gives his, rightfully so, a 6%, a 4%, ours get 3%. Sheriff Choir gives his employees, you all have that ability. You go in and you give your employees more money than our employees. So does Jeff Hancock, and that comes through Betty's office all the time. Some people get 20% raises.
Correct.
I guarantee you, our employees are always the ones that are comparing. You can compare and that's fine, but our employees say, what about us? And I say, what about us? Because we never get to do that. It's just how the system works. It's unfortunate, but that's part of it. Will, good to see you on. I'm glad to see you there. Go ahead, your turn, Will.
I could just make a response to that. That's not correct. My staff have received absolutely nothing from the state, assistant county attorneys and otherwise, in years on end. And fiscal court has provided a small amount from time to time. Don't compare other people on what my office does in any form or fashion. That's the first raise that my assistant county attorneys have received in literally years. That's the first raise that my child support staff, if I may.
We're only talking about your county employee staff. I don't know anything about your state employee staff.
If I can, sir. I have 3 sets of employees. So when you're talking about raises, the court's done a small amount. But if I can give my employees more because of the largesse of the government to raise them to an appropriate level, I think it is our duty to do so every single time. And I commend those other officers to do it. But my staff has not received the raises that fiscal courts received in years. And we all know it.
Rick, I'm sorry, but that's not true. That is not true. Your county employees, the ones that work for the county employees, I will tell you this, every one of them has gotten since 2015 altogether a 22% raise. Since 2000, in 8 years, they have gotten a 22% raise. All county employees have gotten, I've got it right here, of what has been done in over 8-year period, 22%. Those are county employees. Now, your other ones, I don't know. Your state
That's right.
I don't know about that.
Y'all don't have a clue what actually happens in our offices at all. So what I'm making a point is I appreciate what you're doing, but now I have the other side with the state providing an increase, and they're talking about that increase. And that was my point, that if we can provide that, we should provide that. And I plan on doing it if it's available, because it should be available, because they do the work. And I don't know about you all having just one office or 3 offices. I've got 3 different agencies I have to deal with to provide the services that the people of Franklin County have. And this sector is one small little bit.
I can only control what I can control. That's all I can say. Will, thank you. I'm sorry, your hand's been up.
Are you there, Judge?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you.
Okay, thank you. I agree with our county attorney to quite an extent there. I think it should be something that needs to be looked at across the board. But and I understand what you're saying too, Judge. It's every constitutional office that has the authority to put whatever type of raises in there. With respect to the coroner's office, we've always wanted to kind of consider taking direction from the court. Although, I understand that we could put 8%, 13%, but we wanted to try to put something in there or get some feedback from the court because at the end of the day, it is taxpayers' money. I guess my second point I want to kind of talk about is with Mr. Johansson is there has to be a plan adopted. So is there basically two options to that plan? Number one, if an agency's 13% down, the option is basically either to bring that 13% up initially all at one time. That's one option. Or is that graded out over a 3-year budgetary time frame? Is that basically what we're looking at doing? Is that what he's suggesting?
Yeah, so I can answer that question. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. He asked you the question.
So what's a little bit unique about Kentucky is that you have your separate elected offices that have the latitude to manage their budgets. Whereas let's say in Arkansas, that's not the case. You've got a quorum court that manages the whole budget and specifically works with each elected official on that process. So for the elected officials that are managing their own budget and the percentage that you're behind market, what we would recommend is that 13% that you try to match market so that puts you in the best position to attract and retain. If you can afford to do that. If you can't afford to do that, then you look at doing that over a couple budget cycles so that your ultimate goal is to get there, to get to that market rate so that you're viable and can compete in the marketplace. If you can do it in 1 year, great, do it in 1 year. If it's not possible, doesn't work financially, then get there in 2 years.
Okay, I appreciate your answering that question. So ultimately, up to the whole committee, that's what we're looking at. That's the decision that has to be made. Is that correct, Judge? Is whether we're going to take each agency and spread it. If it's 13% below, is that going to be made up all at one time, or is that going to be spread out over 3 years? Is that what we're trying to accomplish?
I'm not saying specifically 3 years. I don't know.
Well, I'm just hypothetically.
I know the end point is over $600,000. We cannot afford to do that in this year. So the reason I put a 3% compensation adjustment in there is to start the process of trying to bring people up. I do want to say to you, I think you, and I don't know who your staff member is, but you said one of your staff members is 55% below market. I think that is, and we have several too that are anomalies that are not at the minimum. And I think the minimum needs to be adjusted as well as part of the first phase. If you are below, if we have staff members that are below the minimum pay, then we need to look at where the 3% goes and what is the difference and bring staff members up, your office, our office, wherever, to at least the minimum pay. But once again, and this is your choice. I'm not being critical, but you, Rick Sparks, Jake Bonner, Chris Quire, Jeff Hancock are your own entity. So we have a minimum, we have a mid-range, and we have a max. We're going by that. But what you all go by is what you go by. You really, you don't adopt our plan. So your plan, what you do, you can use it as a reference point, and that's, I would suggest probably that would be a good idea. If you're 13% below, then you use that as a reference point and you work on that. But what you present to us is your budget, and you have the ability to give somebody more, as Councilor Sparks does, as Jake Bonner does, Jeff Hancock does, Chris Squire does. You present a budget that has at least a 2% raise in there and other raises in there. The court has the authority to say, yes, we will, or no, we don't.
And
Yes,
that's probably because of your all's ability to do that, has your variance, a lot less than what it could have been if you all had not continued to implement other raises, you'd be a lot worse off.
And there's one piece though that and Tamara helped me with this, because I think Will is when you put Will, unfortunately, and all the other elected officials, there's an anomaly with Will that's not like the others, in that most of his staff comes under the auspices of elected officials. His deputies come under that pay rate. So you need to explain that if you would.
The term salary set for the deputies under Will's office and your office is set in the May before the election. However, it can be changed. So,
Yeah, but it can only be changed starting in January of the new year.
no, those
Well-
salaries can be changed at any time. It just takes fiscal court approval. For whatever reason, statute has fiscal court set those salaries, but fiscal court also has the authority to, the ability to change those salaries.
But we
Okay.
did change some of those salaries at this time.
Well, Judge, if I may, with all due respect to the committee and everybody's hard work with this, I guess I want to yield some questions to the voting members, which it's you, Judge, and the two squires that are here. What are we waiting on? Are we waiting for more information before we can decide on a phase one? Is that what we're waiting for, or what the collective, the three of you, what are you all looking at? What do you think we can do here?
Well, I'll answer it right off the bat. I'm putting 3% in, and that would include you all as part of a 3% across the board raise. That's what I'm calling initiating phase one. That hasn't gotten passed. Before we leave, we're going to have votes on a couple things. That would be one of them as part of it.
And, I'm just trying to understand where we are and where we're working towards. So, and again, that's where I was coming from with the numbers yesterday, is I don't know what numbers to provide until we, have the information and guidance from you all. So, but thank you for the time and answering the questions.
All right, Squire Muller.
Thank you, Judge. If I could answer Mr. Harrod's question there. For me, there's still a lot of questions. When we started on this journey, it was about, putting different levels in, like Squire Sebastian was talking about, job titles, things like that. Obviously, we're looking at pay, which is a good thing. Last night in court, I asked, what would this cost if we implemented the whole thing? And I guess maybe Susan has gotten that to the judge this morning at $600,000. So, we need to keep in mind, we need to be able to figure out how to pay for all this. And I appreciate you and everybody else who's kind of taken that in consideration over the years and not just put big numbers in the budget, because ultimately we have to figure out how to pay for it. So I guess, the next question would be to me, like, Judge, like your suggestion, 3%. I know in January did a 5% COLA, now 2%, so that's 7% for the year. So I'm just trying to figure out like what that 3% would cost us, because ultimately we have to balance a budget. So I mean, for me, that
cost, but we have that.
okay.
You got that yesterday, but we've got that.
Okay, so Will, I mean, that's where I'm at. I mean, there was a lot more information, I think we've asked today, and this has been a good meeting. I mean, this is a big item. I mean, this is one of the biggest things that's come before us. So I don't think it's anything we want to just rush into. And I know we've been working on it for a while, but it's a big ticket item. So, I want to make sure that all of our county employees feel good about it, and not just about money, but about, where they are with their levels and things like job description and things like that. So that's just kind of where I am, and thank you.
Thank you for that.
Okay, looks like that's it. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Betty.
I was just gonna respond to Michael here. Susan gave that number yesterday to do the 3% in the minimum pay. It was gonna cost $163,000 of the first phase of getting the minimum pay, and then 3% for the judges. And coroner, it does include your staff also. So that was that question. What was your other question? I'm sorry. Michael, what was it?
I don't know.
I think he said he wanted to make sure that the employees were happy with where their job descriptions and where they.
Yeah, I was just answering Mr. Harrod as far as he was asking, I think the 3 voting members, just kind of where we are with the whole process. And I was kind of just letting him know where I am with the whole thing and, on this journey, I guess you could say.
Okay, I just want to make sure too, because I want to be clear, because if there's something else that the committee needs, if I can provide it, I want to go ahead and provide it so we can move forward. Now, if there's something added, we would have to get with Mr. Johansson of another agreement. So I just want to be clear myself, what questions can we answer so we can move this forward? That's why I was trying to write down that, just to see what I can answer, or Mr. Johansson can answer today for you.
All right, let's move for, Rick, okay, Councilor Sparks, sorry. Go ahead, Councilor Sparks.
And Judge, for all the members of the committee, I hope that everyone understands the efforts that everyone's trying to do for their staff, their administrative staff, et cetera. This is not 2021 anymore. The circumstances have changed. The court has had to address hauling contract improvements, the overall effect of these salary structures, et cetera. It is a complicated matter, as Squire just said. But I would also ask the court, and thank you, Judge, for what you have done to get these budgets for folks who are within county government. But be aware of the total circumstances. This is our county government that we're relying on every single day. And they do all kinds of things to do every day. 2%, 4%, that's all great. But this is not the end of the game today or tomorrow on what you're paying any of our staff or each other or yourselves. It's not the same world we were living in last year, or from what I understand, in the last 40 years. And it's going to require a lot of diligence to ensure that your employees are appropriately provided for across the totality of the county government and government in full. Thank you.
Thank you. This is definitely a process, as Squire Muller said, a journey. Betty, if you would, at this time, Squire Sebastian.
Thank you, Judge. I was just trying to address the coroner's question, asking everybody where they think they are. And I had said this earlier in the meeting, maybe halfway through. I feel like where I'm at, I feel like this is let me start at this point. We've heard from the HR director a number of times that this has been a process that's been needed for a number of years. So rather than try to rush this entire process through, and rush is a very poor choice of words. I had indicated earlier, I think this is a two-step piece. And so I'm not sure if I've said something that was misinterpreted or funny over there. I think the two-step piece is the step is that we are the entire court, not just the committee, has the opportunity to look at the positions, which ones were changed, what was added, modified. I think that's an important element. And then the second element, which I termed earlier the horse, then we have the cart as far as making the appropriate assessments for the salary based on what the recommendations are and all the factors that come into play there. So I had said that earlier. That's where I remain at this point, given all the conversation today from the consultant, from the HR coordinator, and so that's where I am to address the coroner. And so we can, both pieces can come to the court at some point. I don't feel like I can make a recommendation on both, on the whole thing. I'd like to see it go in pieces to the court. But that's just me. So that's.
Thank you, Squire, for answering my question and re-going over that. I know you went over that before, but thank you. That gives me a direction to talk to my staff about, because I'm getting questions from staff, and this helps me a lot. So thank you.
Well, it does.
Yeah.
I'll just say this, if it sounds to me like the other two members don't want this to go forward, so there's nothing really to talk to your staff about, because if this doesn't pass, it doesn't go. I mean, that's just plain and simple.
So-
I don't know why we can't take it, we can't move it forward.
So let me ask this. How did my comment of saying that this all needs to go to the court in two pieces, how does that say a misunderstanding of maybe your comment of stop? There is no, I mean, I didn't use the word stop. I think you used the word stop. I would like to see it go forward to the court. And as I said, in two pieces. So
Well,
I'm just trying to.
I believe the word was rush
Stop.
it through, and I don't think that since August, we've been rushing this through. I think this is a matter of we have a comp plan in front of us. We have seen it. We've discussed it. We have the expert on who did it today to answer questions. What we're trying to do is, in order to take a step forward, we have to have something to take a step forward on. So if we don't pass it out of committee, if it doesn't come out of committee to go to court, then basically we're just spinning wheels again. And so I don't understand why we need to spin wheels. August is a long time ago to get started on this and to say we're rushing it. I don't know what you want. Squire Muller?
I'm not.
Squire Muller, Sherry, Squire Muller.
Thank you, Judge. Yeah, I don't think by any means I had an intention of stopping this. I guess my question is, the purpose of today's meeting is just to accept this, or is it to pass this from the Johansson Group? I just want to make
You've
sure.
already accepted, you've already received it. This is you got on your agenda is to recommend adoption of it.
So would it be appropriate to take it to the court to discuss it, kind of like Squire Sebastian was saying? I think that would be the next step, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, this is why we have a committee that we're sitting here discussing it. I thought that's the process. That's the way the process has gone, is to bring it from the committee. The committee says that we do or don't adopt it, and then you can take it to the court, because the other court members are going to say, well, what did the committee say?
So I'm happy to say what I've just said. Again, I have said, I think we should take this to the court. And for me, I see it in two pieces going before the court. I've said that 4 or 5 times now, so I'm not sure how that can't be more clear. I didn't say stop, hold it. I think the word someone else about stopping it. I said I would like to take it to the court in two pieces, but that's just me. The coroner asked the question, so I'm trying to answer it, trying to answer you. I'm
trying to get clarification, because as the very first thing I said in this meeting when we started is that we've got a couple pieces that we need to look at. The first is to adopt from the committee the plan. 2, a phase 1 approach, which is 2 pieces of a phase 1 approach. 1, taking care of those people that are those job classifications that do not meet the minimum standard. 2, approve or as part of the budget, a 3% compensation package to go along with that. So I've been very clear what I'm asking for. You all are just saying, let's don't vote on that. Let's just take it on to the court. I think that's what you're saying. I don't know what you're saying, really.
Can I ask Sherry, what are your two pieces so I can understand too? The two pieces taken to court. What's the first piece?
So as I indicated earlier, I think the position descriptions so that the court has an understanding of what those are. And then
I sent all those job descriptions to you all about 2 months ago.
Which is great for the rest of the court to see, because they will, as the judge had indicated, they will have questions. So it's great for them. It's great for them to discuss that. No, absolutely, as it should be at the court. So that's the first piece. And if they have that information, that's fantastic. They will have that to rely on to discuss it. The second piece is
So you want me to, I'm sorry, hold on just a minute. I want to make sure I'm clear. So I need to resend all the job descriptions that I sent to y'all previously. Is that correct?
No, I didn't ask for anything to be resent. I'm just saying, make them bring their attention to that, because that's one portion of this. The second portion gets to the raises and the money involved. As long as the court as a body signs off on the position descriptions and then moves to the next element, because I just think there are two pieces to it. I've said that all along, but I mean, I've never wavered from the two pieces. And I think we've talked about that all along. The critical element was sitting down with the staff. The critical element was sitting down with the staff to make sure that what they are doing on a daily basis and how that aids the county in doing the job and the work, that had to be taken care of. Now, that was an element of this, correct or not correct?
It was done. It was done.
So again, that is a piece to sign off on. And the next piece the other piece to sign off on is the financial component. That's all I'm saying. There's two elements to it. I've never once wavered from that. Never.
Well, there's more than just the financial component. There's several parts of the financial component. That's why that's what I was bringing up here at the committee meeting, is the pieces of the financial part of the plan. One, you can't do anything unless you approve the plan. There's no, well, we'll approve a financial piece of a plan that we didn't adopt. You can't do that. So the question, the $64,000 question sitting in this room at this committee is, are we going to accept, approve, adopt this compensation plan that we paid $28,000 for, to help our employees, to move our employees' salaries forward, to make them commensurate with everybody around them, and to do what we can to help our employees. That's what this is all about. This isn't about one thing or another. I don't know what, but this really isn't about the job descriptions, because the job descriptions are not the purview of this committee. The job descriptions come from the department heads and the changes in that, and not this committee. This is a compensation committee.
But if the parameters aren't there for them to fulfill the roles, that, so then why is it important to go through the job descriptions if this is not something that needs to advance as well? But
it's been done. I don't know how to make it any clearer. The job descriptions was obviously the first piece of this puzzle. And the job descriptions come from the department heads, not us, not us as a committee. They go through the department heads. The department heads met with the employees and they discussed it. Isn't that correct, Mr. Johansson? Did you not go through that process?
We did. Yeah, that's already been done.
Okay.
Yeah, if you don't mind, let me interject here. I commend the county for going through this process, because there's some counties that have put it off and just kind of plod along without really being respectful of their employees and doing what needs to be done to formalize the process, put a pay structure that's taken an internal view as well as an external view of the market, and bring those two together to give you a pay structure that's viable and you can live with for the next couple of years until it's time to change that. Squire Sebastian, you're correct. The foundation of that process was the job descriptions, and to make sure that those were current and that they were reviewed. And they were reviewed, and everybody participated in that process. We took our process of being objective and evaluating those jobs so that we would place the positions fairly in the pay structure. And then we used the market to give us some indication if there was any other adjustments that needed to be made. So your statement about the foundation of the job descriptions, that's right on target. It is foundational. It has been completed, and it did help us to look at where the jobs should be placed. So today, we really recommend that you adopt the structure, recommend that to the full fiscal court, so that now you have something to work with on a going forward basis. And then as part of the financial piece, the second part of that process I agree with you saying that it's a two-piece process. We've already completed that first part, the job descriptions, the positions being placed in the structure, and the market study. The financial piece to adopt is, what does it take for the county to pay for the employees to get to the minimum, and the 3% adjustment in pay. And it sounds like that's been calculated as a certain $160-something thousand. And so those pieces are there. I think the time now is to be able to move forward and to adopt the process, recommend that to the fiscal court. And then the next part of the phase would be to mature into that pay structure and determine what kind of pay adjustments need to be made in the next budget cycle.
All I'm saying is I think there are two pieces that need to go before the fiscal court for approval. They may come back as a group and say they agree with all the new job titles or the job changes. They may say they may not agree with some of those job titles and or changes. I don't feel like I can speak for how many titles is it now? 60, 80? I'm just not coming up with the number. I'm not grasping the number. That's the only reason I'm saying I feel there are two components to this. And Mr. Johansson, I appreciate you agreeing that there are two primary components with steps in each process. Thank you very much.
Let me make this statement again. It is not the purview of the fiscal court to approve the job titles. The job title, is that correct, Tamara?
The job description.
The job descriptions, I'm sorry. The job descriptions. I apologize. The job descriptions.
Court should approve, because there have been changes. I didn't say anything about the descriptions. I discussed the title, and that is critical.
No disrespect, that is not the fiscal court's job. That is the internal of county judge, his authority for the job descriptions. I believe it's very inappropriate that if we send everyone's job descriptions to the court and they can sign off to make sure it's correct, they don't know what the individual person does. The elected official and the department heads and the county judge does. That is not part of the fiscal court responsibility, and I'm sorry to say that, but it's the facts.
I can appreciate you being sorry to say that. I appreciate that. What I said was job titles. So again, I just come back to that because there have been some changes. It would be appropriate, I think, for the body to review that. That's, there
are four, Mr. Johansson, there are four job titles that have changed. Is that correct?
I understand what she's saying. She's talking about, Sherry, thank you. She's talking about the job titles. There was titles that was added. It was the planning and zoning, a project manager, the heavy equipment operator 2, the mechanic 2, and the office manager. That's what she's talking about, the titles, not the job description.
Well, a piece may have been added to, they didn't change planning and zoning director. It just said, these are their job. I think it's more a job description than it is a job title.
But those are just the recommendations.
Okay.
So to answer her question, basically, we would have to take back, say if we did change, I hate using titles, just say mine instead of somebody else's. Just to say if they change HR director too, that title would have to go back to court to change. Correct, fiscal court clerk? Okay, so those would have to go back. By you adopting this with the 3%, that is only it's not changing titles. You all have to approve changing job titles.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I've been saying it's a two-part piece. I don't know how it's gotten to this level of discussion, but that's all I've been saying. I promise.
I understand.
Counselor Sparks?
And members of the court, just to remind everybody, so we stay on track. The most that this committee could do is to make recommendations for the court to approve, whatever fashion you want to approve. On the other hand, I hope that everybody's seeing the diligence, budget, as well as comp study, day-to-day work that everyone is trying to do relative to people's jobs and the things that they're having to take care of. It's a nasty thing, and the court's going to have to decide how to parse it. But the next step is going to be you all to approve a submittal to fiscal court to consider. But the fierceness of people looking for these it's good. Take that for what it's worth. Good job. But your next motion is going to be to send it to court.
Okay. So I guess on here, the agenda says 2022 county judge pay grade and range structure adoption.
Recommendation.
So is the recommendation to accept that, or is there something else? Squire Muller?
Thank you, Judge. So, Mr. County Attorney, with everything you've heard here, and I think the importance of, keeping this moving forward, but I think you can see there's still some things that we need to discuss in the full court. What's your recommendation?
That should not be a negative. That's the way the game gets played. So rightfully so.
I'm sorry, you broke up, Rick. Could you say that again, please?
Exactly how it should be played with further considerations and discussions in the fiscal court. I think you all, the committee was faced with certain challenges that you wanted to get a handle on. But as all committee members know, the committee in and of itself has no authority to adopt. My reading of the agenda was to consider an adoption to send it to fiscal court, where ultimately the decision has to be made, whatever level, to continue this and other discussions. But this is the way it's supposed to be done. You've deliberated. You can't vote anyway because you don't have the binding of fiscal court, so it's got to go.
So I guess, I think we're on the same page here. So I just want to make sure we do it however you want us to do it to keep this moving to the fiscal court.
The next motion in that situation to consider, as I understand it, and correct me if I have this wrong, was to consider this payroll / schedule and submit that to fiscal court for their formal approval, consideration, or whatever. Today was my understanding was a discussion from a couple of weeks ago when this was first presented. That's what I thought today was for. I got a little wound up, but I always get wound up, so disregard that. But that was today's purpose, was to deliberate the committee's position relative to this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, is there a motion to send the 2022 pay grade and range structure to the fiscal court?
So
Or not.
just, can I ask this? Can we say we're sending it to them to consider for at least a couple of ways, or do we just, we send it lock, stock and barrel and they consider the title changes? Cause that's the only point I've been trying to make. And then the financial component. So somewhat just, that's what I think. So I'm all for moving it forward. And I've said that from the start. I just think it needs to be in two pieces. So how would you phrase someone?
Well,
Anyway,
I think it's a little more than two pieces. I think it will be adopting it, would be, Mr. Johansson would, but and that's what you're saying has to be done. First, you got to adopt it. Then you have to look at the other two pieces. One would be look at those. How do you want to handle those employees that are below the minimum? And two, do you want to accept? Will you the 3% in addition to the cost of living, the 2% cost of living, as part of a financial package to help structure this compensation plan? So those are the pieces I see as the other two part of it. If the plan is adopted, then the next court meeting would be to approve the four new job title positions. But we could make it at the same time, I guess. But you'd have to approve the plan before we'd have to approve the plan before you could approve the title changes.
I see that as the other way. I see you need to have the plan, the titles correct, whatever they're going to be before the whole plan's adopted. So that's obviously everyone has their own opinion. So perhaps if we just move this to the court, maybe they can distinguish between the two, as you've made a distinction and I've made a distinction. And that maybe that, because I think everybody wants to keep it moving forward. I would like to see it move forward and go to the court. So I'm saying, yes, move it to the court.
Is that a motion?
Yeah,
Is that a motion by you, Squire Sebastian?
That is a motion to advance it to the court. Those are my words. This is a motion to advance the part to the court for review.
Are you sending that without a recommendation?
I don't know.
Of course, I'm gonna ask, what did the committee decide to do?
Discussed in two ways, and you don't want to discuss it two ways. So everybody's going to have a different opinion. That's why I'm saying I would like to advance this to the court, because if I say it the way I want to say it, you might say no. And I don't want to not get it to the court. I think we all want to get it to the court. I'm just saying I'd like to advance it to the court. I think it needs to be looked at in a title element, job title element, and then a financial component. And if that financial component has 3 steps, it has 3 steps. But again, I don't want to get the words wrong for somebody to say that's not how I want it done. I want to advance it to the court. That's what I'm saying.
Squire Muller? You second her motion?
I can second that motion because I think that's where we're all trying to get. And if I'm wrong by saying that, county attorney could correct me, but I think that's what our county attorney said too. That's the next step, correct? Mr. County Attorney?
Well, actually, he said.
There-
Muller.
Yeah. Thank you, Judge. Yeah, I tend to say a little bit more than that. But yes, that's the bottom line. My understanding is to go to fiscal court to address whatever variance needs to be done. But your next step is to submit this thing to fiscal court for further discussion, at least.
So then I think then we did it right then.
Yeah. Good. Took us a little bit, but yeah.
I don't get it. Sorry. I don't understand it myself because the title change would come way later. You all have to approve those title changes. It has nothing to do with not approving the pay structure. Is that correct, Mr. Johansson?
So,
Help me with this because I'm getting confused too, because I don't know what they want us to do further. And I want to try so hard to make this work for everyone. So help me here. Make me understand what we need to do.
Okay, so the recommendation is the pay policy, and that does include the title changes. It's just that for the court that has purview over the job titles, we just need to make sure that they identify which titles have changed as part of the adoption of the new pay policy. So that would just be information that's provided to the full physical court as part of the recommendation to move it forward. And then the adoption of the policy then triggers the opportunity to look at the financial part of the piece. And that financial part of the piece does have some parts to it, moving people from under minimum to minimum, and the overall adjustment recommended by the county judge. So it's packaged together. It just needs to provide enough information for the full physical court to understand the changes that are being adopted by the new policy, and then move it forward. It's a good opportunity for the county to achieve a formalized structure and to move within that structure.
Okay, that's good.
I like the way you said.
Me too.
Mr. Johansson. And God help us, let's hope that we can do that.
Well, I think you will. I mean, I have good confidence that you've got the squires who are asking good questions, but I think it's for the benefit of the employees. It's time to move forward and have a structure in place that you feel good about. It's competitive and you can work within it for the next few years.
Amen, amen. Thank you.
Yes.
Amen, amen. Okay, so we have a motion, a second, and I'm also in favor, so let the record show that it was unanimous in sending the comp plan forward to the fiscal court. All right. With that being said, it looks like that's all that we're going to be able to do today. Before we adjourn, are there any department heads, any elected officials that want to add to, say anything before we move on? Adjourn. Anybody?
Judge, I just want
Anybody?
everyone
Okay,
to
go ahead. Council.
take consideration. Today is Professionals Day, and the whole point is to make sure that the folks who take care of the county are taking care of the county in the way that's appropriate. So I'd like to just say thank you to all of our professionals, colleagues, et cetera, who really bust their ass every single day. And good job. And thank you on this day. So go out and get them a pizza or something. Enjoy it. Thank you.
Our office got them balloons
And cupcakes.
and cupcakes. So anyway, all right.
Everybody, thank
Anybody
you.
else? Anybody else? Seeing that there's no one else, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
All right. Second here, all in favor? Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Thank you all for being on. Most importantly, thank our employees for the great work that they did. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johansson.
You bet.